So Halen is a galactic thief. She used to be part of a big thieves guild that she grew up in, and it was something that she learned from, and it was basically her entire life. And then one day, she was betrayed by one of the leaders of the thieves guild, and almost everyone was killed. She managed to survive, however, and now she basically steals stuff on her own. She does all of her contracts on her own, but because of that, she doesn't have any backup. She doesn't have anyone helping her, so she's kind of a lone wolf who is kind of desperate at this point to make money. Halen's motivations are survival, and in this case, in order to survive, she needs to make money because currently she's in the hole. And in this story, she's literally in the hole. She needs to get out and get this sword, this artifact, back to the doctor so that she can keep living for a little bit longer. As far as personality goes, Halen's pretty lighthearted. She doesn't take anything too seriously. She likes to stay humorous even when things are dour. But when it comes push to shove, she doesn't really trust anyone. She keeps everything very tight to the chest and won't reveal much about her character unless, someone becomes very close with her, which hasn't happened in a long time.
I have done a lot of iterations of Halen, and we have done a lot of iterations of Halen. It's been a collaborative process. I mean, I've been kind of, I guess, guiding it, but group members like Nick has had a lot of contribution. In the start, we weren't even really sure what she'd be like at all, whether she'd be this kind of like space armored person or some kind of jacket wearing kind of, Star-Lord Indiana Jones type. Like, we had a lot of ideas.
We even had a samurai at one point, I think.
Oh no, I mean that's kind of how it started, because it was just going to be like a character with sword and gun. Actually, I think now that I remember, most of my initial designs were some kind of like swords person with just kind of like, I had like very like low poly, like blocky heads and kind of.
I think we started to look at that and say, well, that's a little cliche.
We made the gender
I think we got
decision after we already kind of had a good idea of the.
Like, we had the design for Halen kind of down roughly, and then it's like, why not make it a girl?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we started really on the process when Nick made this one drawing where we had been discussing kind of a sort of a screen face, and he did this one where it was a really good direction. It had like the arm with these red kind of like sections.
And I think we when you see the like that visor thing with the two eyes, it makes you think of like Eve from WALL-E, which automatically gave us this kind of feminine feel, and then we just went with it.
I don't know, we were discussing whether it would be armor or not armor, whether it was more of a gritty feel or some sort of like Mega Man kind of style. We had a lot of different decisions that we made throughout the summer. Yeah, so I was pushing for the more kind of smoother, kind of rounded aesthetic to like the armor plates of Halen. Because, I mean, obviously because I like how that looks, but also because I wanted to have, it's sort of, the way our game was going, the way we were sort of moving in terms of the visual style, is we wanted it to be kind of a lighter, looser, kind of more colorful kind of feel. That kind of rounded, smooth armor kind of sort of fits.
Something to offset the violence that we have in the game, and like the swords and the sharp edges that were going to be incorporated into Sharp's character.
Exactly. In terms of the color scheme, we had a few variations. I did a few different sort of color explorations in terms of what color the gun was going to be, like, because we were going to have this dichotomy of color where the shooting was going to be one color and the sword was going to be one color, but it wasn't necessarily established from the very beginning what those would be. So I had a few, like one I think it was like green and blue. I had a few, but we ended up going with the classic kind of a red and blue. When you're making a character, you want to have colors that are associated with them, so that the audience kind of more strongly identifies their character. So for Halen, where she had this armor and she had like a scarf, so if you make the scarf like an identifiable color and then you maybe use little accents of that with kind of a more muted color, like her armor is still kind of a warmish color, but it's just a lot paler. And then what you can do is you can take that color scheme and you can put it on something like a spaceship, and then the audience can clearly say, oh, well, this is Halen's spaceship because it's the same color. I don't think we initially had like detail enough to really decide. It was just going to be some sort of character. Actually, from the beginning, I was pushing kind of a more androgynous character, just kind of like, because we were going to do a very athletic sort of character who was going to be jumping around and nimble. Good, yeah.
Something a little bit like Journey, where you can't really tell.
Exactly. And then when we started having more detail to the character, when it started being clear that this is going to be some sort of person with a voice and a story, that kind of low detail couldn't really cut it anymore. You'll notice Halen's helmet has these sort of ear things. You see it in it's not like a common thing by any means, but I just kind of like the way it looked, and I thought it kind of fit. Because when you have a character who's just got a helmet, you have to do a lot to make them sort of more lifelike feeling. So by giving them something that kind of looks like ears, it kind of makes them more sort of animalistic. Of the many very heated debates that we got into about how Halen looked, one was about the color of her eyes. Like I said before, I was doing different sort of character things, like, oh, what if green is the color of the gun, that kind of thing. So I had been arguing for that kind of thing, because I was saying, well, you got blue and red, like that's sort of, it's done a lot, that kind of color dichotomy. So that's why I was pushing for maybe like a green and like dark purple or something, like something different. And along with the green being part of the gun, it's also, the green would be, Halen's eyes would be green. I thought that looked not normal. Like, for example, you think robot eye glow, and it's probably like a blue, like Eve's eyes in WALL-E.
A lot of things with green eyes are more scary.
Perhaps. When you're doing a cartoon aesthetic, so when you're doing cartoony shading, cartoony colors, cartoony movement, you really should do the whole thing. So if you take a character like Halen, she started off having just like regular human proportions, like based off of a human proportion character. We had to go a little bit further, to just make her just a little bit more cartoony in terms of her proportions. So we would
just to normalize the aesthetic.
Exactly, yeah. So we did little things like kind of like changing just her body proportions, like her feet size, head size, that kind of thing.
Why is Halen different in terms of animation than any other character in the game? That's mostly due to the fact that she is the only organic humanoid that we have as a character, all others being either mechanical robots or the rival, who isn't necessarily humanoid, he's more of an alien. So in terms of that, we had to kind of take special care into her animation as well, with her being the main character. What's challenging about animating Halen is, one, she's the main character, therefore we need to have lots of detail put into her animation set. For example, we have 20 plus animations that we need for her at this point, whereas some of the enemies we can get away with 2 or 3, maybe 4 animations that we just blend together. So this is primarily because we want to capture a lot of her personality. She's a very vocal character. She doesn't actually have a mouth or face, so we kind of have to capture all of her actions and personality, or all of her personality in her actions, as well as kind of the eye motions, or I guess textures we're going to be using. Why are we using mocap for much of her animation? This is because we ourselves do not possess the skill to capture much of the nuances and quirks of her personality and put that into the animation. So what we're going to do is we're going to capture it in mocap. We can have an actor do all the necessary actions that we need to capture her personality, and then input